we were studying on Periscope.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, here's what we're going to do. So if this doesn't end up going live, apologies, but we will do our best. We can still take calls, but welcome everybody to Tunnel Vision. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, joined by Keely, Eure, and Shotgun Spratling. We haven't done one of these for a couple of months with all the weird COVID stuff going on. We're having some weird COVID internet broadcasting stuff going on right now. So if you're watching us live, that's great, but we're doing a separate recording for the show so we can put it up on YouTube and stuff. Later, what we're going to talk about today, big news coming out this week in college football. We heard from the Big Ten that there were going to be conference games only. A couple of days later, we hear from the Pac-12 that conference games only would be happening. Of course, that means no Notre Dame, no Alabama. The two most prominent games on USC's schedule will no longer happen. We don't know what the rest of the schedule is going to look like, if they're going to add any other conference games. USC is already playing 9 of them. Will they add one more? If you had 5 away games and 4 home games, they give you a home game and do 10. We still don't know that, so we'll find out hopefully in the coming weeks. Also, Larry Scott, the Pac-12 commissioner, has tested positive for COVID-19. That's very 2020 that the highly paid Larry Scott is tested positive, so we wish him the best. Hopefully he's a quick recovery. And then also stage 3 of the workouts are starting tomorrow on Monday for USC. So stage 3, when all the freshmen can come in. Stage 2, which started Monday. What's Keely?
Stage 2 started on Wednesday.
Started on Wednesday. So it's supposed to start on Monday. Started on Wednesday. Yeah. That's when players could actually move in. And any players that didn't live within an hour radius of campus, they could come right now.
Players, yeah.
So this is really kind of the start of what the NCAA was allowing, kind of the full team stuff coming together. So freshmen will be coming in and all that. So it should be interesting. We'll see how that all turns out. But as of tomorrow, freshmen can get back to campus. They can start doing some of the more full team stuff. So I think we wrote down it was 8 hours, weight training, conditioning, and film review. And then the 24th, so July 24th, starting summer access with walkthroughs for 20 hours, and then on August 7th when fall camp would start. That's obviously if we have a season. I kind of feel like the conference-only thing is sort of like delaying the inevitable, give you a couple weeks to try to figure things out, hoping for that Hail Mary that something happens. But I think the last time we talked, a little bit more optimistic. Things started to get better in May, then it started to get kind of worse again. And here we are in July, and we're going to see some sports. I watched golf today. The NBA's bubble is going on. Baseball finally came up. They got their heads out of their butts, and they figured something out. But we haven't seen we've seen the MLS, soccer is going on. But we haven't really seen a full team American sport that we, one of the big ones going on yet. So we'll see if the bubble works. Hopefully the bubble works for the NBA. You can't do the bubble with us, so with college football, which would be like. But anyway, welcome you guys back. Keely, how you doing here in your quarantine?
Good, I'm doing well. I think my internet is laggy, so let me know. I've been told that apparently Shotgun and I's audio is good. Yours is spotty, Ryan, so not sure about that. If you want to work on that while talking. Yeah, so we're kind of at a fork in the road right now. I know on Family Feud podcast, we talked about how the Ivy League decision was kind of the first domino, kind of giving other conferences cover for what's to come. And then what do we see? That the day later, the Big Ten decides to go conference only, and the Pac-12 CEO group votes on Friday to go conference only. To me, everyone knows I've been Debbie Downer about this from day one. I think it's just delaying that. Hey, Debbie Downer is right. So I think it's just delaying the inevitable. These are, if you look at the conditions in professional leagues, the bubble, the amount of time, effort, money put into the bubble for the NBA, it's nowhere near what you're going to see on the college football level.
Right. Yeah.
Are struggling financially. There's no way they can do this. And the fact that we're trying to expect student athletes, amateurs, to come back in a pandemic and act like everything's semi-normal. I know they have precautions set up in place, but this is not. I don't think it's necessarily fair to expect that of them. So to me, I feel like it's delaying the inevitable. We're kind of in the denial stage, and I expect bad news to come rather than good news. I know Debbie Downer entered the show, so hello, nice to see you again, Ryan.
Shotgun, you're Debbie Downer.
I'm a realist, and I think I've said that from the very beginning that, I was hoping for the best, but I was, not thinking that things were going to work out correctly. And we had a little bit of hope, when there was a decline, and hey, could you get down to where the positive tests and the hospitalizations and everything else were minimal, like some other countries had, then you would think that maybe you can find a way to do it. And still, you're looking at the other leagues that are doing this and having success overseas. You're looking at soccer. You're looking at, you're not looking at anything that is quite the same type of structure as a college football where you have 100 players on a team. I think that is one thing that is so unique and different about college football. Even in NFL, you have a smaller roster than that, and they're even going to have smaller rosters for their training camps. They've talked about, going forward, instead of having the, whittling it down from 85 or whatever to 53, they're going to start with a smaller number to, just put in as many limitations as possible. But then also, there's no other place where you really have all 18 to 22-year-olds. I think that is so unique in the fact that, okay, you have 11 guys, 10 guys, the coaches and the staff around them that are trying to tell them to do the right things and, follow all the protocols and whatnot. But you're asking those 10 coaches to basically babysit 100 players, and that's not something you do. It gets so much more respect from players when it's from their peers. And I think that in other leagues like the soccer leagues where you do have some young players, or even MLB where you have some really young guys that are in the major leagues, and hey, they may want to go out and want to party or do something like that. Well, guess what? They have a veteran on that team that's probably going to come in and say, hey, we can't be doing that. And you've seen that already with some guys like the Indians had a friend Mel went out and, they basically quarantined him when he came back from a 4th of July party when people had seen him on social media without a mask on at a family gathering, I think it was. And so, and then the veterans came and talked to him and said, hey, we can't be doing that type of thing. If you want to be on the team as this bubble type of situation tries to go forward. And I think baseball is going to fall through too with the way they're going to travel and try to do all the different things. I don't think it's going to work out well. I think there's going to be a bunch of bumps in the road there, but they have a better chance of getting it done just because those guys are paid. They have a choice of being there. It's not like there is something on the line for them as far as a scholarship for the college players. And, there's some things with the college game that is just so different from everything else that makes it very hard to believe that it's going to work out. Definitely not on the right schedule. We now know that officially with the Ivy League canceling, their fall sports, or at least, postponing them at least. And then the Big Ten and now the Pac-12 saying they're going to conference only. So we know it's not going to be on the normal schedule. Will they be able to figure out a way to get it done at all? It's becoming less and less likely until we see some advances on the science side, the technology side with the virus and the vaccines and the treatments and stuff. And maybe the spring schedule is a possibility, but right now fall is looking glim.
Glim, nice. Yeah, it doesn't look like a great chance, unfortunately. And I think, the way we were going before, where you were hitting these milestones, it made sense. Like, oh, you hit this milestone. And then there was sort of the stuff where, well, we actually have to have people together in the same room. And that's when things got a little bit hairy. I think when they did a press, like some kind of press tour for the Rams and the Chargers when they announced the Hard Knocks thing, and I think Sean McVay said it best because they were talking about, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, and he's like, you're going to play football. Like, that's not a socially distant sport. Golf is fine. You can go out there, you and your caddy just go out, walk around. I felt comfortable playing golf. You're basically walking in a park by yourself. I've gone hiking. Like, those things are like, you're not in this big group of people. It makes a lot of sense. But for football, you're going to be in the trenches, hitting each other, and to think that you can keep. If the plan was, well, we're going to play football, but we're going to be socially distant when we do it, it just didn't make any sense to me. And I think the reality of that is starting to set in. We haven't heard from the other conferences yet, but I would assume early this week, guys, we're going to hear from probably the Big 12 first, and the ACC, and then the SEC last. Hey, no, it's going to be conference games only.
To your point, Ryan, did you see the NFL said no jersey swaps after games, and some NFL players came out like, okay, so we're going to be hitting each other, and then after the game somehow it doesn't work that way? Like, that kind of proves your point about this is kind of not feasible right now.
That's the hard part. And I get, people they're tired of it. They're just tired of, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I get when people are like that. They're just like, they're over things. And when you get kind of hypocritical stuff going on, I'm like, well, you can do this, but you can't do that. I'm like, well, wouldn't this be way worse than that would be? And you're like, don't do jersey swaps. Like, okay, but I can tackle this guy full speed and face to face, and my spittle's falling into his face mask. Like, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So if you're like, well, you can't touch anybody, but you can play football, just don't swap jerseys afterwards. Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
And I just came from on a full cross-country trip, went across to the East Coast to see some family, came back, went through 21 states. So, it was an excursion, and just seeing the differences in people, who is wearing masks, who's not, how they're kind of treating different things. I just don't see how it's going to work as far as college football being a countrywide entity, with everyone having different rules and different ways that they're approaching things. I was in a couple of national parks the last couple of days, and just like Ryan said, when you're out hiking or you're doing something outside like golf, or you're away from everyone, you feel perfectly fine. And I felt that way when I was at the Badlands National Park in Wyoming. But then when I went to Yellowstone, there was a grizzly bear that came down a hillside, and everyone stopped and wanted to watch and see and get some pictures of it. And suddenly there are people breathing on the back of my neck, and I felt really uncomfortable with the people that are around me, because a lot of people did not have masks on. I had my mask on, and it's just the differences. And a national park like Yellowstone is kind of a good melting pot of the whole nation, because you see. If you play the license tag game, you can get all kinds of different states there. There's people from all over the country that come visit to see Old Faithful and the animals and everything. But it just seems like that there's so many people who are doing different things, and there's just not a consistent message from at top to kind of point us in the right direction. That it's going to be a little while before this gets figured out. And for college football, that's not a good thing there for it. Good sign that college football is going to take place at all anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little, it's different. Chuck and I talked about this offline, where the United States, and sometimes when people say, well, the United States is different because of this or that, it's the United States. There's basically 50 countries all together. They all have their own individual rights. It's not, you don't have, France or, Italy divided like we are but that's the way our country was founded, and there's differences. And I think all those local governments, we have, just even here in California, Orange County is different than LA County, different than Riverside County, because you have a huge state like California. 10 million people in California is like the whole country of Canada just in LA County. It's insane. So there's a lot of unique differences of what's going on. And when you see college football, you're playing in all these different regions. You're going to bring all of them together. It's hard enough for Gavin Newsom to try to keep it, contain California and the governor of Florida and New Jersey and all the other. And you want to mix all that stuff. It's just, I think it's going to be a lot more difficult. So yeah, unfortunately, it just seems like this delaying of the conference season is delaying the inevitable, and not. It's not going to be the solution. And we had a comment. We got to talk about maybe it goes forward like that and we get lucky. We had a Facebook comment. Skip the Pac-12 games, just play Notre Dame and Alabama. So it's the exact opposite of what is going to happen. But there's a lot of USC fans, guys, out there that are upset. They obviously want to play Notre Dame. I don't know how much they want to play Alabama, but they felt like, hey, this is, Clay Helton's back for another year where we felt he shouldn't have been, and now he's getting a pass by not playing the two toughest games on his schedule. You could say at Oregon would be up there. But what do you guys think? Keely, start with you about the fans that are a little upset about that.
on the scale of things to be upset about in 2020, it's kind of like tough luck. I'm sorry. Like of course, I want football to happen. I would have loved to cover a season or a Notre Dame game or Alabama game because those are the best. But I mean, there's not really much you can do. Your hands are tied in a global pandemic. So that's all I have to say. Can I go back to USC's handling of this, though? Because I think we have to give credit to USC. They're a private university, and they're releasing their numbers, first of all. And second of all, they just released their third round of COVID tests, their test results, because they're testing weekly, and they only had 4 positive total in 3 weeks. Whereas you look at like a Maryland or Ohio State, a Clemson, where those are high numbers. And talking to some sources, they were very happy with what's happening with how USC is treating it, how they're isolating players who do test positive. So I think it's worth giving a shout out to USC when we are being critical of the way that college football is trying to run things. They're at least trying to do a good job and trying to put their best foot forward. And that's what I've heard. So I think it's a good thing that it's 4 out of 201, the 201 tests that they had so far. I was told that they hadn't gotten confirmation for their third phase of returning, which is Monday. I don't know if that's changed. I can check on that soon, but it's worth noting because that's something that the university didn't approve of yet, and that was kind of the wait and see. And I'm wondering if that date or that phase 3 changes now that we got word from the Pac-12 that their start date will also change too, because they said that they're pushing things back. So I don't know how that affects USC, and because this happened on Friday, it's a little I don't think it's fully figured out yet.
I think you're also going to see that with it going to conference only, that there's not as much pressure to kind of rush to this, because that's one of the things where USC wants to get there, and because if the schedule was played as it was initially scheduled, you don't want to fall 2 weeks behind Alabama, and they've been able to do workouts and stuff before you have, or any other opponent that that a Pac-12 team is opening the season with, Oregon, Ohio State, those type of games. You don't want to be a couple weeks behind. That could be the difference in a ball game. If we are actually able to get on the field, so that instead of rushing those things, now that you have just conference only, I think the conference can say, hey, let's not push it. Well, if we have to push the season back a couple weeks, we're only dealing with us. We're not worrying about anybody else. We're going to put our own protocols in as a conference and make sure that everything is copacetic and everyone is in agreement with it. Instead of, that's the thing that's unfortunate, is going to be some of those smaller schools that, those buy games where they would be getting $1.5 million or something to go to an Ohio State to get trounced by 36 to nothing in the first half or something like that. Those games are going to be gone, but part of the reason is, are those teams going to be able to support at the same level that an Ohio State or a USC is when it comes to testing, when it comes to the precautionary stuff that they're trying to do? And now I think that's what the one potential positive of going to conference only is that now everyone can be on the same set of rules. Everyone can get directives from the conference, and maybe that leads to a little bit of cohesion, where we just talked about with the United States being so large and so many differences across the country, where it's so hard for that to be done. Maybe with conference only, that kind of narrows the window down a little bit and gets it pushing in the right direction.
Yeah, and that's the thing that people have been arguing. At least conference only, you can have more uniformity. You can have a leader at the top. And the interesting thing, now that we know that Larry Scott is positive, does that change the way that he implements things? Like, because he's been through it. Does he know, it's better to do that? I don't know. Just thinking out loud here, guys. But does that change anything now that the commissioner of one conference has been tested positive? Who knows? But yeah,
I wonder, like, if it seems like, I think from the release, their symptoms were mild symptoms, but if it was like hitting him pretty hard, he had to be hospitalized, and maybe it would be a whole different story. It's hard to say. Yeah. I think the one thing you take away from bringing it back to the conferences is that it just shows the lack of leadership that there is in college football. We talked about this before. There's no college football czar. There's nobody running the entire show. The NCAA would put out some releases like, yeah, do what you want, guys. We just want you to be safe. Go ahead. Whatever you want to do. There was no leadership whatsoever. There's no direction. And at least at the conference levels, you sort of come back down to where you do have a strong leadership. And it's, unfortunately, We don't have it at a higher level. There's not like a Power 5, someone that's running like the Power 5 together. It's really how these conference commissioners interact, which we were told there was a lot of talk between all the conference commissioners, and we thought that if something came out, it was going to be a joint release from all and the Big Ten just comes out and drops that bomb. Yeah. 2 high-profile Pac-12 games are in that, among those with Washington was supposed to play at Michigan, and Ohio State was supposed to play at Oregon. So it, instantly impacts the Pac-12. The SEC seemed like they were really caught off guard, and they wanted some kind of cohesive message, but that's what you have. So we're going to see leadership at the conference level, which is great. I think they're all going to be kind of in lockstep at some point. Even the SEC, they'll come along and say, hey, we're just going to do conference games. Because as more conferences kind of drop out, and you realize those games against Wofford and stuff, like they're not going to be able to have the same kind of protocols. And it's going to go down to the high school level. Like we already see California JCs have postponed everything. I'm guessing you're not going to see high school football at all. We haven't heard an announcement there. I mean, the Modern Days and St. John Bosco's of the world will be fine. They could do it. They could do the testing and stuff, where there's a lot of other schools that just don't have the kind of resources. So I think there's going to be a lot of balls to drop. But now that you bring it back to the conference level, at least, like you said, there's some control there. But it doesn't really fix a lot of the problems that you have, except sort of like the flexibility and some of the leadership stuff. But you're going to be dealing with, Oregon is going to have different numbers than Washington, and Utah and Arizona have different thoughts than California does. And so you still have to deal with these local governments across the breadth of your conference, but it does bring it back a little bit. So it's not this kind of national thing. So it was a step I think that needed to be taken, but unfortunately the steps we see going forward are probably not going to be positive ones as far as having a college football season.
I think what this step does, going to conference only, is the one word you said in that spiel is flexibility. I think it gives you more options. There's less concern about the travel across country, going to Texas and worrying about, what's the situation there. It's what's in your backyard rather than what's going on all the way across the country and what is everyone else doing. I think by limiting it down, you get a little bit more flexibility there. You can move the schedule as needed as well. So I think that's part of it. Now, you did say that it brings it back to strong leadership. That's always debatable with the Pac-12, though. There is leadership figures, but I don't know about strong leadership.
No, that's fair. But at least you have a leader. Like, who's the leader of college football? Like, there.
Exactly.
We don't have one. So at least you have one. Now, our leader here in the Pac-12, now he's got the virus. So, that, unfortunately, hopefully he recovers. We had a Facebook comment or question. Ryan Keely, shotgun. Keely spelled incorrectly. Sorry, Keely. Sadly, Stanford has shuttered several sports. Being a Pac-12 team, I've heard that USC will follow suit and shutter non-money-making sports. I think that's a question. He's asking us if we've heard that. I have not heard that any sports are in danger right now, but we don't. Football is not canceled. Once football is canceled, then we're going to see a major impact on the athletic department budgets. But I haven't heard that yet. I don't know if you guys heard anything.
I'm in the Matrix right now, but I was told that that's like the very, very last resort.
Now looking at Stanford did have over 30 sports, and Keely brought this up on our Family Feud podcast that the only school that was above 30 was Ohio State. Prior to this, now they cut 11 sports. It's a ton of sports. Yeah. When you're looking at USC has 21 total, that's still a hefty amount. And I think that while USC doesn't want to do that, and I haven't heard anything necessarily that USC is looking into it, don't be surprised if this becomes normal across the nation, where you're just going to see a lot more, non-revenue sports kind of get dropped, and that's just unfortunate for all the kids that are playing, and that's their opportunity to go to college. If I ever have kids, that's what I want them to be doing. Play some sport that no one else plays. That way you get a scholarship. Be the long snapper if you have to be, whatever it takes to get that free ride so we don't have to pay for school. But those kids and getting that opportunity to be a student athlete at a collegiate level, it molds you as a person so much. And, those kids just aren't going to have that opportunity. And that's going to make it that much more competitive for the kids that, that are playing the revenue sports and everything else. Because, maybe, if you have an athlete and he's deciding between, 3 different sports when they're growing up, maybe you look at, the pathway in the future as well. Now you kind of get narrowed down to now there's only 2 that are available.
And go ahead, Keely. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, in the case of Stanford, it's worth noting that they were already operating on a deficit. So it wasn't like this was something where everything was peachy coming into coronavirus, and then they got hit so hard that they had to. This was something that they were already looking at prior to coronavirus. So it just seems like it was the necessary step given what they were faced with coronavirus on top of that. So I don't think it's a comparable situation necessarily.
Yeah. Men's volleyball is a big one. Like they're losing men's volleyball. That's a big. Like there were some other ones that are like fencing or whatever. Like you don't really hear much about. But men's volleyball, they've won championships. Like they're a power.
And wrestling too.
Multiple Olympic players from that men's volleyball program as well. They lost a lot of their sailing sports that they had on there. I think they had four or five different sailing sports that they cut. So those are ones, and a lot of their sports that they did cut. There's not a big presence on the West Coast for many of those sports. So then you're just accruing that much more travel costs and stuff. That makes me – you look at a conference like the WAC. The WAC is the wackiest conference. Their geographic footprint is ridiculous because you have Seattle in the Pacific Northwest. They had Chicago State as their northeast school. You have UT Rio Grande Valley, which is basically by the Gulf of Mexico and the border of Mexico in Texas. And then you have Bakersfield and now Cal Baptist in the WAC. Like you're traveling so much, and you're looking at schools like Utah Valley and Cal State Bakersfield prior to them moving to the Big West. Like I don't know where that money is coming from to travel that much. So maybe you see some conference realignment eventually coming out of this again as well. The former conferences like the SWAC and the Big South and those were very geographic based, and then everyone wanted to expand because of TV money and everything else. Maybe you see some changes that go back to being a little bit closer around geographics to be able to limit some of those costs.
Well, Shotgun, you brought this up on the Family Feud podcast. I thought it was interesting. Rather than going conference only, what if you went regional? Whereas the Californias, they're operating under the same local government, to a certain extent, LA County, but so that you can at least have your parameters a little bit more than if Washington or Oregon. I thought it's an interesting food for thought.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I was trying to pull up a question here. Let me pull it up. So here's the Facebook question. With conferences playing in conference games only, will other conferences have an advantage over the SEC now that they will most likely be adding 2 more in-conference games amongst themselves, meaning we won't have 2 SEC teams in the playoff? I think that would apply for the ACC and the SEC, where you do only play 8 conference games. In the SEC, I mean, you cannot play someone from the other division for a decade. It's crazy. Like you just, so that you're never going to see that kind of interaction. Like Georgia and Alabama aren't playing in the regular season; they're only going to play in the the SEC championship game. Well, they might have to play in the regular season this year. Where they're like, oh, that's a big deal. So there's that extra potential loss that you've already seen in the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the Pac-12. So I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, if it does get to, they find a way to play things out and there is a playoff, maybe you even have a temporary expansion of the playoff, like a lot of people want to 8 teams where every conference winner gets in, because you're not going to be able to compare across conferences. I think that it makes so much more sense to just have all the conference champions get automatic bid into a playoff if there is, if we get to that segment. And then maybe someone is choosing the last couple of teams to go to fill out 8 there. But because there's still questions on, when you say conference only, does that mean, okay, you're just going to play out the schedule you already have? Are we going to completely rework the schedule? And now in the Pac-12, you're going to play every team. So you're going to play a full 11 games. You're going to play every team in conference. In the SEC, are you staying at 8 games? Are you moving to 10? Are you going to go to 12? If you go to 12, then you're only missing 1 team on the other side, and then you get a true conference champion. You don't need the conference championship game anymore. So I think there's a lot of question marks still to go with even if it is conference only, there's still a lot of things to be figured out.
Yeah. One of the things I tweeted out before the Pac-12 announced this is, could USC and Stanford still play Notre Dame? I mean, they could sort of act like an extra conference game for the Pac-12. And it looks like, from what I've seen, it looks like the ACC would sort of take them in and kind of and do that. So I don't know. Maybe it's like a quarantine. You'd rather quarantine with like one conference and not play a couple other ones. But our buddy Keely in Iowa, he says canceling the Notre Dame game, USC effectively loses its every other year rotation that would have the Irish travel to LA and USC travel back to South Bend. Any chance that USC asks Notre Dame to have the Irish travel to LA in 2021? Yeah, I don't know how that's going to be affected for a lot of stuff. There's home and home series that those get canceled. Everything's kind of booked out. I mean, all the scheduling stuff is way up in the air. We don't know. Yeah. But do you guys feel like, what are your thoughts on, could USC, Notre Dame, and Stanford, like, could they incorporate that into the Notre Dame schedule somehow and make it work?
Go ahead, Keely.
I think you get into the situation where it might turn childish, where it's like, if they can do that, why can't we do that? You know what I mean? Where I think you need uniformity, where conference only means conference only. And so I don't know, maybe there's an exception, but I just don't see how that promotes what they're trying to promote, which is we want to scale things down, not go far away, even though the logic doesn't fully make sense as far as spreading. But I think you would have to make an exception for that. And that doesn't seem like something that will promote what they're trying to get at right now.
Looking at Coley's question, as far as the rotation, I think much more interesting is the home and home series within Ohio State, Oregon. The whole home and home series is predicated on, okay, well, we're going to go to your place, you're going to come to ours, so we get our fans, we get to sell those tickets and stuff. If you lose that home game this year, are you going, come on, guys, you got to give us something back, or we're going to need more money out of the contract from when we traveled? There's a lot of questions, and because, like Ryan said, those are booked up. Some schools have their schedule set, their non-conference schedule pretty much locked up through 2030 already. Those are just crazy. There's been games that are scheduled for 2034, 2035. So I think with the USC Notre Dame one, whenever the contract is up, there's a potential maybe USC gets to double up back to back. That could be something you could do if you really cared that much about it. I think maybe you just the next contract, it would be an odd number of years rather than an even number. So USC would get one more home game in the next contract, and you just continue with it on. I think those are some of the solutions there. But I think the home and home are a much bigger question mark going forward with the scheduling. Maybe people just blow up a lot of those schedules. And you've looked at some of the smaller schools, and they've tweeted out, I think it was a commissioner of one of the smaller leagues is like, so are we going to be suing because we've already got a contract for this? Well, we're not giving up this game.
And the thing that I find interesting on how that works is normally you could argue it's a force majeure because it's like, this is a pandemic, but then can you really argue that if you're still playing football games? Like if you're still playing football games, how can you not play us if you're the lower school, So I don't think that it can even hold up legally with that contract provision. So to me, I find this fascinating of what happens going forward. Like who wins here?
Yeah, we got Matrix again.
I know, I'm
sorry. That's okay. We hadn't decided to do these for a while, and because there was so much newsy things going on, I felt like we wanted to do them. I'm going to go and figure everything out I possibly can with this stuff and just make sure, okay, here, this is, with the poll there, just try to do everything we can. And because I think we want to do more of these going forward. And so I will make sure we get out all the kinks. It's been a while since we've done them. The one-on-one stuff has worked pretty well. Getting the 3 people in and doing all the platforms hasn't, obviously that's been a little problem there, but I did put a poll up on our Facebook Live feed and asked everyone, do you think there's going to be a college football season in 2020? And we had 37% of the people said yes, 63% of the people said no, and we had a couple hundred people weighing in on that. So, about a 1/3, 2/3 kind of thing. Is that sort of what you expected, or?
Does it count if it's actually in 2021? Still the 2020 season, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Shotgun 4D chess over there.
You know, it's funny when we asked. I think it was Pete Thamel came out with a column in. It might have been in April or something, saying like, you know what, just decide to move it to the spring now. And I'm sort of like, I could see that. That makes sense. That did not go over well. Like, it got no traction whatsoever. People were not into, let's delay the season until you had to. But I think if you delayed the season, the planning would have been a lot easier and better because you just make that choice.
Yeah.
Now, if you delay it, it's going to be a little bit more of a scramble mode. But
it's similarly when for college baseball and for the NCAA just canceling all spring sports, and the College World Series is in June, late June, and it was canceled in March as well. And a lot of people were like, "Why would you do that already?" I was one of those people. I was like, "Why not give it a little bit of time and see what happens?" But they went ahead and made the decision early, and obviously, there was the right decision with how everything has gone. But I think part of the reason why people were very hesitant to make any big moves like that early is because things were changing so quickly, and things continue to change. It's less day by day now; it's more week by week or bi-weekly as far as the shifts and changes in the graphs and how well we're doing as a country or not doing. So I think that's something where I think a lot of people didn't want to push forward and then be like, oh, well, it worked out. Can we still bring it back and try to reverse course? I wanted to wait a little bit. But since you talked about that, right now is the breaking point. Next week is basically the breaking point where every coach has said, we need 6 weeks. We need 6 weeks of preseason. We need a couple weeks for conditioning and then, a 4-week fall camp before we can play a game. Well, that's right now. That's this week coming up is that 6-week breaking point. So that's why I think you're seeing these decisions from conferences saying it's not going to work right now. We can't get that full preseason in. We're going to go to conference only and have a little bit more flexibility. We'll see where we're at, in a couple more weeks.
Yeah. Here's another. We had some Facebook questions I want to put up there. Now with the first game over 2 months away, do you think the Pac-12 will watch what the NFL does closely and follow suit with regard to game day/week protocols? And yeah, I think the whole plan was to kind of see what these other sports do. You want to see, if the NBA can't do it in a bubble, then you got to shut things down. The NFL is a little different. It's closer to what college football is. You're going to watch the MLS. You're watching everything. Any kind of live sporting event, what's going on. So what do you got? Start with you, Keely, and then we'll go to Shaka.
I mean, yeah, I think they're going to watch and see what they will do, because I've said from the beginning, if there's one league to ram things through and make this happen, it's the NFL. Like, they're going to have their football. But the thing is, I don't know how much you can replicate that at the college level, because obviously to do things well, it always takes money. And like we've talked about a lot right now, is that college athletic departments are struggling financially. So I think, yes, they'll wait and see, but it's happening concurrently. So I don't know how much you can tweak as far as controlling the spread and things like that.
Yeah.
Look, it's the same as the scientists. They're looking at everybody's research and trying to build off of it. It's the same for all these commissioners or athletic directors. They're looking at seeing what other leagues are doing. Okay, that worked, that didn't work. That worked, that didn't work. Let's build off of it. And, they're looking across you're looking at the KBO if you're MLB and saying, okay, how are they doing it? Now, why is it not apples to apples? Because obviously there's a lot of different variation with the size of the country, but also what is going on around the country itself. And, one of the things that's interesting is, in South Korea, they've been trying to get fans back for a couple months, and they get 60 cases in the country, and they're like, that's too many. We can't put fans back in the seats. The U.S. is getting almost 60,000 in a day.
Yeah. And Florida had 10,000 a day, I think.
Yeah, 10,000 and people are like, well, just push forward and keep going. And I think that's where the big divide is. So you can't just compare apples to apples, but all those commissioners, all the athletic directors, all those people are looking and seeing, okay, what protocols did they do? When did they have some issues? People are looking at the MLB and going, wait, they have their own testing. Why are they having these issues with the testing and stuff like that? That's what you're looking at and seeing and trying to take away from. So, yes, they are trying to look, and they will see what the NFL does. But I think you're looking at everything, not just because the NFL is the closest as far as sporting-wise as far as the sport of football. I think you're looking at everyone and looking at the protocols, because it's not just – and this I brought this up on the Family Feud podcast. and I want to say it again just because I think it's something that gets lost, is that college football and playing games is not just about the players, because there's this big conversation about, hey, they're 18 and 22, people in this demographic, even if they're getting ill, it's not as serious as other people. It's not just them, though. It's the janitor that's cleaning up in the locker room afterwards. It's the coaches who are all older. It's the families that are when you go home to see mom and dad after that game. It's all the people around it. So just remember that when you're thinking about whether or not college football can be played, don't just think about just the players that are on the field. It's the entire community of the college. And so it's more than just the players. It's the other students involved as well, all the teachers, all that goes into it. And that's what a lot of people are thinking about. And that's why I think you're seeing everything get pushed back farther and further.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the things we didn't mention was that USC did come out with a plan to have on-campus classes, before. That's what they announced, and then they backed off of that, and it's going to be mostly online. So then you're like, well, you're not having people on campus. Like, how are you going to have the student athletes there? So that was another one of those developments when they were like, oh, USC's bringing people back for classes on campus. That's good. That's a good thing. Then they said, no, we're going to back off that. That's a bad thing. And it's kind of along those lines. Has USC gotten any guidance from the state? They're definitely working with state and local governments, LA County. I don't know, Keely, if you want to add anything to that, but that's something they've been doing.
Yeah.
Every one of their plans, they kind of like pass it through the LA County people there. Yeah,
I believe Bone was even on a call with Mike Pence and some other athletic directors too. So they're at every level.
Yeah. All right, I think we'll do one more question.
Ryan, can I jump in and ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Yeah,
if for some reason they move to spring, how do you see that playing out as far as scholarships? And if you are a draft eligible senior, do you sit out? Does the draft still occur? How do you see all this happening in time between, how much time would you take off between starting a fall camp? Is it even realistically possible? Because I've seen a lot of former players and older people in the business kind of say that's really hard on your body to go spring. I think Matt Leinart said that too, to go spring and then fall. What's your whole thoughts on that? Because it doesn't even seem like the people who know and who play, they don't even think that's feasible. So then it's what do we do here?
It's definitely, I think it would be a challenge. I mean, the interaction between college football and the NFL, obviously that would have to change. The whole scholarship thing, I mean, there's going to be a lot of concessions made, a lot of, what we saw from the sports last year, you're going to give people an opportunity to keep their scholarship. I don't know how that works in college football. Are you going to have over 100 people on a roster on scholarship for a year or two or something? I don't know how you kind of deal with that. The incoming freshmen, are they going to all be gray shirted essentially? And then they can still, they would not lose that year of eligibility. And I think if you move it to the spring, you kind of have to move the following, you have to move the following season as well. I don't think you want it to end in May or June and then start the season up again in September. I think it would be one of those situations where you move 2020, you probably have to move 2021 a little bit later and start, in November or something. So I think there would be a lot of moving pieces to that. And that's where you're going to have some issues where you can't just do that as a conference. The Pac-12 can't do that. The SEC can't do that. It has to be college football does that. So who makes that call? But the NCAA will come and they would have to give the okay for, all right, everyone that's on the team, you didn't lose a year of eligibility because you didn't get to play in 2020. But then you're dealing with these crazy rosters and schools that are already strapped for cash are going to be having more players on scholarship for longer periods of time. So, I think there's a lot of complexities by doing that. It's probably simpler to just cancel the season, but there's adding complexities there too with all the games that are scheduled and all that stuff. But I don't know what you think, Shaka, because I know baseball was a part of that as far as scholarships and how that would be coming about.
Yeah, so baseball, the NCAA did give some leeway, give some help with the roster as far as expanding the roster. You can have more players. They didn't expand the scholarships beyond. If a players can have another year of eligibility, schools do not have to give that. The scholarship limit stayed the same though, so it's still 11.7 scholarships there. Whereas some schools and some conferences were hoping they would bump it up just a little bit to try to help out with the seniors that are coming back while freshmen are also coming in. You're going to run into that. if for some reason this were to happen, and you canceled the football season, you gave everyone an extra year eligibility, well, that's where you're going to see the Nick Saban processing come in. You're going to have people get pushed out of programs and say, hey, it's been great for you to be here. Congratulations on your degree. We don't have room for you to come back and be a fifth-year senior. We need you to just go on and go forth with your future outside of football. You're going to have that with underclassmen too. Just say, hey, we just don't have room for you anymore here. That's going to be part of it. And the NCAA could bump it up and give them a little bit more scholarship leeway there, but you're not going to see every school take advantage of it. It will be similar to some other sports like baseball that aren't necessarily fully funded. Football, across the country, everyone has the 85 scholarships. I don't know of any off the top of my head that are not fully funded. But baseball, like I said, you can have 11.7. Some schools, some smaller, mid-major schools go about it with 6 scholarships. That's half of what you're allowed, but that's all the school was willing to pay for. So now if you're that coach, you're playing with, half the money basically that another coach has. So that's what it could be, something that you see going forward. Maybe you see some teams decide not to fully fund football in the same regard, but they're going to try to do everything they can to get that 2020 season in, even if it is the spring, because again, it's all about that money.
Yeah. And if it's only like 8 conference games and they can make it work somehow, and some schools only play 6, but that's going to count as a full season, and everyone that was on scholarship, that's a year for you. So maybe that's simpler. I don't know. There's a lot of complexities here. People, I'm sure you guys are getting questions all the time. We'll get parents ask us stuff.
Yeah.
And you just don't know. You just don't know at this point. Incoming, recruits will their parents will ask you what does this mean? Like, nobody knows at this point. And that's, if someone says they know, they don't, because there's crazy stuff going on. We got another question. If the season is canceled, will Clay still be giving a full year to prove himself?
Yes. Definitely. And this goes for every coach in the country. Schools just don't have the money to, what boosters out there are just doing so well right now during this quarantine time to say, hey, you know what? I didn't want to pony up the money last year to try to buy someone out, but you know what? I've decided I've got $30 million. I just burning a hole in my pocket. I want to help with this buyout. Like that's not going to happen. There's the financial issues for the programs, but also for the boosters. And that's where a lot of money around college football programs comes from. And, the country at large is struggling financially. The economy just, there's few people, the really rich people are making more money. Surprise, surprise. Whereas everyone else is struggling a little bit.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's do another one, and then we'll probably, you guys about talked out, since we have we apologize for the connection problems and everything. I'll work on it, make sure we get things working, but hopefully the recording will go up. I'll put it up on Facebook and YouTube as well. I think Periscope was working, but one last thing, with mostly online classes, I believe he means, does that mean no band?
Probably yes.
They were doing band tryout stuff online. There was a kind of a fun video that they were tweeting out there and stuff. So it seems like they're still planning on doing stuff. But yeah, if there's not going to be fall sports, there's probably not going to be a band. And they did like a virtual Tusk, I think, where they all were on a Zoom thing, which was pretty fun. So. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that's going to be, but if you're not gathering for sports, you're probably not gathering for the band either, which, another one of those traditions is just, it's tough that it's not going to, be around again.
Yeah. There are just so many opportunities across the entire country that are going to be lost because of this virus, unfortunately. And it goes for student athletes. It goes for the regular students and being able to get the full college experience. You're going to have kids that are growing up now, young kids that, maybe when they're 16, 18 years old, you look at it and go, yeah, that was the quarantine generation, because their social skills are just a little bit different than everyone else's, because they're going maybe a full year without seeing anyone except on a screen. Potentially. So I think there's just opportunities and social opportunities, and something like the band is one of those type of things that you're not going to have. So that camaraderie that you have from being a part of something, and that's the same thing with if there are more sports that are cut at different universities, similar type of situation. And hopefully everyone can find something to put their skill set towards. But that's one that, you think that's going to be an unfortunate cutback that you're going to have is where there's no band. Now, if you really want a band, with no fans in the stands, you could spread the band out all across and you could have a truly acoustic situation.
How do you conduct that, though? Art Bardner just on the 50-yard line?
Might as well. You have a instructor on each side. You'd be good to go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean the band, they take that very seriously. So I mean, yeah, it's just going to be hard to have them all in the same place. They couldn't have meetings. There's just so many things you couldn't do. Let's do one last one. This is just for Keely.
Oh God.
Who will have more wins this year, Ohtani or Helton? Who do you got, Keely?
I'm gonna say Ohtani, just because. Once again, I don't think college football will be played. If there's anything played, I think it's professional leagues, aka baseball. And I will not take any more Ohtani slander. Chris Trevino on the Family Feud pod was slandering my boy Shohei Ohtani.
Okay, so with the 60-game season, how many starts do you expect Ohtani to get? Like, will he be? I mean, I don't know.
He's had back soreness, so he hasn't even pitched the one time. So I just hold my breath. We're going through each day, Ryan, one day at a time. Stay in the day. That's all I gotta say.
Say he's fully healthy. How many starts Shotgun? How many starts would he get out of a 60-game?
12
season?
if they're on a 5-man rotation.
So 12 starts.
And the plan is to pitch him on Sundays, because then Mondays are more of a day off. So then
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can do once a week. So he's hypothetically getting 9 to 10 starts somewhere, 8 to 10.
So, I mean, 5 or 6 wins would be a lot for him this season. Is that fair? It'd be a decent amount. He did pretty well. If he's
are you making
5-3 with 2 no decisions or something?
Predict Ohtani's record in a pandemic season right now?
I'm just saying, it's not like he's going to get 10 wins. So it's basically if Clay Helton plays this conference games schedule, if USC plays, 9 games, Clay Helton's going to get more wins.
And what was my preface? I don't think that any games are going to be played. At all.
Okay, so you're basically betting.
One win is better than 0 games played.
You're just betting that. So you're the super Debbie Downer. You're just betting that college football ain't happening.
I'm a realist. I'm sorry. I've called this from March, and it's not like I've been I've stayed true this
March,
whole time.
that's not being a realist. That was being Debbie Downer in March.
But was I wrong? That's all I gotta say. Yeah. I don't want to be wrong. Can I just have my PSA? I don't want to be. This sucks. I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. I want college football to happen. It's my livelihood. I don't take pride in being right about this. I would love to be proved wrong. So, I don't know. I feel like this is a family chat. Guys, this sucks. We'll get through it. Yeah. Don't worry.
All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap things up. So we haven't done one of these couple months.
Okay, one last thing
go ahead.
On the Clay Helton and the potential of him being bought out or anything. The people that want Clay Helton gone, at least this is 1 year closer to the contract being over. This is the same thing for other coaches that where they're on the hot seat. You're closer to that. Also, the buyouts go down because the contract is still being played. He's being paid for this year. Yeah. So that's the thing. College football coaches aren't paid for games. They're paid for being the head coach of the program. So therefore, even if there's not games, you're still getting paid and your contract is still pushing forward. So his buyout goes down, and also you have less years now on the rest of the contract.
And, we don't know if this would happen, but there's always potential for negotiating a contract. If you didn't have a season, if the athletic department is getting crushed, would Clay Helton come to the table and be like, okay, we can work this out and do the buyout differently or whatever it is? There's potential there. Agents aren't going to want to do that, but there would be. But it's really, for those where you're feeling like, hey, USC was going to get beat badly by Alabama, Notre Dame, and Oregon this year, and Clay Helton's going to be fired, I don't expect that to be happening at all. I think if they play, USC is going to have a really good record because the Pac-12 is just not going to be as strong. Playing at Oregon is going to be tough. But outside of that, ASU is probably going to be pretty good, but if USC plays anywhere near their potential, they're going to win most of their games easily, especially without Alabama and Notre Dame on the schedule. So
I think predicting how a season would actually play out is one of the craziest things because you see how quickly games change. The USC Arizona State game last year Ryan, we debated, whether Jaden Daniels played. Would Arizona State have won USC versus Washington or USC versus BYU with a different starting quarterback? If those injuries. Now, what happens if you lose 3 offensive linemen because they're in quarantine? Yep. So it's so hard to predict. You'd be like, oh yeah, USC is definitely going to be Arizona this year. How could they ever lose? Well, suddenly they've lost 3/5 of their offensive line.
Yeah.
Or you're playing Oregon State and Hamilcar is on the other side. You're like, oh, you lost 3/5 of your offensive line, and you got a sack master on the other side that's just crushing your quarterback all day. How could you lose to Oregon State? Well, there's reasons there.
Yeah. I mean, Cal is like a sleeper pick in the North. I mean, I like that Chase Garber's coming back. When he was in, they were great. When he was out, they were bad. He gets sick and he has to sit out a couple of games. They probably lose those games. I mean, there's so many factors, like you said, Shotgun. We just don't know. But I'm still going to be hopeful that we can get some kind of season in there. Better chance of just doing conferences. But I don't know. We'll see. There's so much money at stake, though, that I think John Wilner put it this way. If there's a way to do it, they're going to figure out a way to do it. So that if you want to keep hold up hope for that the season's going to happen, there's a big reason why. If there's any way possible they can do it safely, they're going to do it. So being conference only gives you at least a better chance of doing that. So
that's been my pitch the entire time, is that if they can find a way, they're going to try to find a way because the money's there.
Yeah.
Now, if things do get canceled, I've got an interesting thought for you, and I'm only bringing this up and continuing the show because it's been so long. But the bubble games? What about bubble games? There you could have that Notre Dame and Alabama game where, the conference schedule is canceled, the season's canceled, but you're like, we feel confident enough that we have safe players. We're going to do this, whether it's for a charity event or whatever, and you have a bubble game where 2 schools just decide we can make this work. Our area is doing well enough. We'll get together and somehow you make something happen. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. There's a thought that came up when you're talking about not having the Notre Dame or Alabama game on a schedule. If you had a bubble game, though, that would be a huge TV success as well. So there's some money schools might be able to make back.
That's true. I mean, maybe that's outside of their TV contract. I don't know.
Pay-per-view. I mean, you would sell so much.
Yeah, UFC's doing a pretty good job. They have their Fight Island over in Dubai or something, and they seem to be keeping people somewhat safe. But I don't know. But anyway, thank you guys for all jumping in and joining us. If you're watching on the replay or if you were trying to struggle with us, so I'll figure out some of the technical things that were going on, and we'll get this working again. Hopefully, at some point we can all be in the studio and stuff, and that would be awesome too. But I want everyone to be safe. We want everyone out there. We want you guys to be safe too. So hopefully you guys are. Wear your masks. Where is it? Let me go to mask.
Where's mine? Oh, mine's not up here. Sorry.
Wear your mask if you can and do that. Stay safe, everyone. That's Keely, Shotgun. I'm Ryan. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time.